Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Flinders City Campus. My name is Sean Parsonage. I'm the Director of College Services for the College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences. Apologies for people in the room who've already heard this gag, but we abbreviate the College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences as HASS, H-A-S-S, hence I'm wearing a HASS avocado lapel pin. Yalaka Nadlugana Yatanga Imperenthi, we do acknowledge that the lands we're meeting on this evening are the lands of the Ganayata. In the unlikely event of an emergency, you will hear a two-tone system. A beep beep is no need to panic, it's simply an alert tone to stand by. If we do need to evacuate the building, it'll be followed by a whoop whoop. The nearest emergency assembly stairs are located around to behind you to your left, which are where the bathrooms are located. The alternative exit is around the other side of the lift wells, but please do not use the lifts in the event of an emergency. Please only use the stairwells. If we do need to evacuate this beautiful building, the assembly point is the Popeye Landing, which is directly in front of the Adelaide Festival Centre, but please just follow the safety wardens. Now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to the wonderful Jane MacFarlane to welcome you to this evening's workshop.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everyone. And thank you to Sean and Flinders University. I'm so proud that we are celebrating our 30-year partnership with Flinders University, along with our other partner institutions this year. And it really has been an incredible 30 years. I want to thank them, Sean and the team, for welcoming us into this incredible new building. This is the first function in this beautiful building on North Terrace, so we really are thankful to be here tonight. And everyone, it's going to be so hard for you not watch the sunset from up here, so thank you all. I'd also just want to acknowledge the team from Carclew for partnering on this initiative. We've been running these sessions, I think, for about 6 or 7 years now. And you're going to hear from Joel Byrne, their grants manager, shortly, and Joel's going to lead a Q&A panel with a range of different artists who have been quite successful in receiving grants from both Carclew and Helpmann. So before I hand over to Joel, I'm just going to give you a quick overview about Helpmann Academy, and just let you know about some of the opportunities that we provide. But my focus tonight is really on sharing with you my tips on grant writing and how to prepare a compelling application. I've put this together. I've had 25, 30 years of either writing grants or reading grants. So these are sort of my tips over that time. Please keep in mind that obviously other people might have different ideas. So this is really, and different grants, all grants are quite different as well. So there's no definite right or wrong way. This is really sort of come from me. So Helpmann Academy, as I mentioned, we have been going for over 30 years now, and our purpose really is to support emerging creatives, and these are people who have finished their degrees from the 3 major institutions here in South Australia: Flinders University, University of South Australia and the University of Adelaide. And we really work to empower South Australia's most promising creatives to realise their visions and build sustainable practices. We are an incredibly small team who really are here for this one purpose, and that is to support you and ensure your creative practices grow in the first 5 years of graduating from university. We support a whole range of emerging practices: visual arts, dance, theatre, music, film, even fashion, and try and look at how, take a holistic approach in how we can develop you over those 5 years as you make your way from university study into professional practice. So what do? We have a whole range of different programs. We have grants, fellowships, we run several mentorship programs, a whole range of different awards. We have residencies both here locally as well as internationally. We provide a whole range of different professional development services, including masterclasses, workshops, and this afternoon we had the first of our Creative Innovator Program sessions for the year, which is a 7-month program that we run to support new creative business initiatives. We also support presentation and profiling opportunities, as well as one-to-one advisory services. I'm not going to go through all of our programs in detail because we'll be here all night, and I know you're all here to really learn about grant writing. But just in the next few months, for example, we have over $100,000 in opportunities that will be provided. So please, I really encourage you, and I'll give you the links at the end, to sign up for on our website, our e-news, and all of our social media as well. The other thing with us, which is different to some funding bodies, is that you can apply for more than one opportunity at a time. You just can't have any outstanding acquittals with us. We also will be running over the next few months a whole range of different masterclasses and workshops. So again, please check out our website to see what's currently on and what's coming soon. Okay, now I'm going to get into my tips and tricks on grant writing. I'm going to try and keep it fairly general so that it'll apply for both, most of it will apply for both Carclew and Helpmann. But if for those of you who are also looking to apply for other grants, it could even be philanthropic organisations. As I said, it's fairly general, so hopefully what I'm going to go through will be relevant in that broader context as well. So, before you start your application, this is really important. Make sure you read all of the information on the grant, and because they're all very different. We get so many, or quite a few each year, where people haven't read the applications and they're actually not eligible. So first, because you don't want to waste your time, so the first thing I would do is have a read through everything, make sure you are actually eligible for the support of that particular grant, and also make sure that what you're applying for is a good fit. You could look at the sorts of organisations or individuals that applied previously, because as I said, they're not a one-size-fits-all. They're all very different. Check to make sure the dates of your project fit within their application guidelines, and in terms of those notification dates and things like that as well. If you do need to make significant changes to your project and what you're wanting to do, perhaps just think about, is this grant actually going to be suitable for you? Because it's no point trying to force a square peg into a round hole. I had a session with someone I wanted to apply for a grant last week and just said, look, it's probably not the right fit for us. We'll look at something else. So you don't want to be wasting a lot of time. So look at all of this stuff up front. So read through all of the sections and questions on the application and look at what are all the questions you need to answer and what sorts of support material you're going to need to gather. It might be details of your work, you might need to get quotes, you might need to ensure your project is secure. And understand what is involved. So once you are confident that what you're doing is a good fit, start planning a bit of a timeline so you're not leaving it all till the last minute. Make sure you're aware of all the deadlines and schedule that time, that planning accordingly, because whatever you do not want to miss that closing date after putting in all of that work. Most grants, once they close, there's no, you can't contact them and see if you can still send that in. Once you've done that, write down any questions you might have and see if there's a consultation process that you can go along to. I know Carclew, Joel, has consultation with people seeking grants, and I think they have a compulsory for some of or all of the grants that they do as well. So those sorts of things are really important to have a look at. If you can get a meeting with or a phone call or get some questions answered, I think that's a really great thing so that you can get that connection into the funding body. But if you do that, I really encourage you to be prepared, write down your questions and go prepared so that you're not asking anything like that's really obvious on their website, like, hey, when's the closing date? That's just an example. But be really considerate to those people who are working in those funding bodies, because generally they don't have a lot of resources. They're really stretched for time, so you want to maximise that short meeting that you might have with them. The other thing I recommend that you do is, if you know someone that's received funding from that funding body, have a chat to them, take them out for a coffee, just talk to them about their experiences and what they recommend as well. Okay, so once you've done all of that, it's time to start writing your application. So you're all prepared. How are you going to write your winning grant application? We, as funding bodies, really want to know how the project is going to make a difference to you and the world around you. So writing your application as though the person who is going to read it knows absolutely nothing about the project and nothing about you. So you need to really be able to sell what you're doing to that funding body. Never assume anyone knows anything about what you're trying to achieve. So you really need to make sure that the content is clear, concise and punchy. Essentially, what we want to know is the list of W's: the who, the why, the what, the when, and, well, it's not W, but it ends in a W, the how. So who are you and why do you matter? Why this? Why you and why now? Connect to where you have been and where you want to take your work and your career. Clearly state why you are the best person for this grant and now is the best time for you to be selected. Speak to the need of the opportunity and also, most importantly, the impact it's going to have on this point in your practice. We also want to know who else is involved. Like for Helpmann, we're really keen to know, are there other graduates who are involved in the project? Are there other, the same with a lot of funding bodies, are there other professional artists that are involved? It really speaks, all of those key components, even though you might be putting in the application, you really need to take that holistic approach when you're applying. Are there other mentors, those sorts of things? So the what, keep on topic and get to the heart of the project, what impact it's going to have, not just for the project, but for you and your career progression. Think also about what might be unique about what you're wanting to do and what might be innovative. Next is the when, which is the detailed timeline. We want to see the key milestones and its delivery. And the how, obviously we want to see your ability to manage the project, how are you going to fund it. The panel generally wants to make sure that you're going to be able to deliver on what you say you're going to do. So say if it's a really large project, you might want to break that down into some bite-sized pieces. So you might want to look at, for instance, if it's a film, a big film, a pre-production and then a post-production. So you might go to the funding body in two sections rather than trying to look at it as a whole. So the following points all contribute to preparing your great application. I always recommend you copy and paste the questions into a Word document. That way you can actually check for typos, spelling. You can, look at any grammatical errors, but also it means that you can come back to it in an easy format and save it or do different copies and those sorts of things as well. Make sure you answer every question on the grant application. Don't write see above or NA. Answer each of those questions. For me, this is a personal thing. I like to see people write in the first person. So you're speaking from yourself, because for me as a reader of a grant, it helps me to connect to the artist rather than talking about, you know, Jane Smith is a great artist, she's done this and now she wants to do this. If you talk to me, I connect to you as that artist. So I much prefer to hear people talk in the first person. And that helps you also to write from the heart, and helps me as a reader to connect to the heart, because it is a combination between the head, which is the practical stuff, but also that the empathy of hearing from you as an artist. Good application share that clarity of vision, but also that enthusiasm. I prefer people not to use jargon or art speak and use plain English. You don't know who's going to be on the panel, and again, it just helps you to connect and make it easy for your grants to be read. Also, don't make assumptions that the panel know any details about you or the project. If you can get someone to read it who does know nothing about the project, sometimes, you know, for a young, you know, your mum or someone else, you know, that isn't in the arts, can be a good sounding board for things like that, so that, and get them to articulate back to you what they think your grant might be about. Provide short answers that are easy to read. We sometimes get long essays. It's not a university major assignment. We really want to get to the bottom of what you're wanting to achieve. I like dot points and headings, so that helps you to then break up each of the sections of the grant into those clear headings and dot points. You've got to remember that you might be one of 80 grants, and as a reader, I might pick yours last on the end of a very long session of reading grants. So you want to make it really easy, so I don't have to go through everything and try and find the answers to what you're trying to do. If writing is not a strong skill of yours, I really recommend that you either record yourself and use that as a basis, or most organisations will allow you to also submit a video or an audio file as well. So if that's not available to you, you can reach out to the funding body and just see if that is part of, you know, if they'd be happy to accept that as well. Okay, now we're going to get into the fun part, budgets. Okay. Do not look at a budget in isolation. Budgets really tell part of the story of that application. It's not just a way for the panel to see how much a project costs. It also allows the funding body to see how realistic you are about what the project entails. So be realistic, do your research, and because do remember that at the end you're going to have to acquit the grant. We at Helpmann provide an example of your budget template and request that you use that. I know Carclew also do the same. So please, anything that you're applying for, check those as well. And it's also important to provide short notes to your budget and expand on what you're planning to do. If you're applying for things in your budget that you haven't mentioned in your grant application, sometimes we get that as well. So as I said, don't look at it in isolation. So you might be talking about this great project that you're doing, and then you start applying for in the budget money for marketing, and you haven't mentioned that in your grant. So those sorts of things, make sure all those dots join as well. So with the income, I have to say panels do look quite favourably on multiple income sources rather than just applying for, you know, say if it's a $5,000 grant, you're applying for $5,000, the whole project costs $5,000. So do think about other, whether you want to apply to other funding bodies, whether it's Carclew. A lot of people do apply to both Carclew and us, but you have to include everything that you've applied for, even if you're still waiting on those outcomes. So please make sure you include all of those and any notes. So what fundraising you might be undertaking, any projected income, it might be sales of work, merchandise, ticket sales. In-kind support is a lot of things that people forget to put in their income. So that is essentially anything that is provided with no exchange of cash. So you might be getting, or so you're getting it for free. So that could also include your own personal in-kind contribution, so your own artist fees. So please make sure you do include that. But if anything in kind goes in as income, please make sure you also put that in your expenditure. So if your artist fees you're putting in, I'm contributing $1,000, make sure you also have that in your expenditure line as well. A completed budget includes obviously both the income and expenditure. So please make sure you do designate anything that is confirmed and anything that is pending. You're right. Okay, so expenditure, make sure again you list all of the items of expenditure. If you can provide any quotes, particularly for major expenses, is great. For us, if you're applying for both Carclew and Helpmann, please make sure you include those on different budget lines. And be clear about what expenses you're asking us to cover. This also helps you when you're putting in for your acquittals. The other thing to ensure is that your budget balances, which essentially means that your income has to equal your expenditure. So both of those numbers at the end need to be the same. And again, we give you examples of that as well. So make sure you check your totals. It's amazing how many budgets we get, and the budget totals are incorrect, or they have been, some of the budget lines have been added up incorrectly. So I suggest you check it and check it again, and if you need to, get someone else to check it a third time. The other thing just to touch on for group grants, if you are applying for a group grant, think about the tax implications for those as well, and you might need to check with a tax expert if you're in doubt about that. Okay, so support material. Again, make sure that it's compliant with the funding body and under their guidelines and what sort of formats they want. Make sure, if you can, to use professional quality, any images or sound recordings, those sorts of things. The better the quality, the better it is for you. You want to put your best foot forward. If you do want to get an endorsement letter, make sure it's up to date. We sometimes get endorsement letters that are actually to the wrong funding body, or they're several years out of date, or the wrong project. So please, those sorts of things just show that that care and attention has been put in. And if you are going to ask someone for a support letter, I really suggest that at that early stage, when you start to write the grant, is to contact that person as early as possible. Let them know a bit of an outline. You can offer sometimes you can offer to write a draft for them, those sorts of things, so make it as easy as possible. And think about with your support material, what are the elements that might be missing from the grant, that really helps to tell the story about what you're wanting to achieve. It might be a storyboard or a script, and the details of other people involved. Those sorts of things are also really important. If you are asked to provide any examples of your work, again, try and make it as professional as possible. Again, if you're starting out in your career, you might have, that might be difficult, which is fine. Just put the best images or recordings that you can use. So just remember that the funding bodies are generally looking at a whole range of different applications. So these sorts of things can really make a difference to getting a winning application. Before you send with support material, think about also your timeline, so put in your highlights. I've touched on letters of support. The other thing actually on letters of support I didn't mention is make sure you thank anyone that's helped you, like given you a letter of support. And even if you're not successful, go back to that person and say, thank you so much for that letter. Look, I wasn't successful on this one, but I'd love, to keep in contact, and would you be happy to write another letter for me? Those sorts of things do go a long way, because often people ask quite a bit, and people love to hear back about what you're doing as well. So how are we going for time? Before you hit send, I really recommend you get someone else to read your application and get some honest feedback. Make sure that you have included everything that's required and all your material is clearly labelled, and often there's a checklist at the end of the application, so use that. There's a few other things, but I think that's all. I won't go because I know we're ready for the panel. If you are successful, remember, if you're not successful, remember the grant process is very competitive. You're not going to be successful for every grant. It can sometimes take several goes. We do have people who come back quite a few times before they get a grant. So I really recommend you go back to that funding body and just get some advice. See, how you can improve it next time, and get some feedback. I think if you can, is really valuable for anyone. With acquitting, make sure you check your acquittal date and also see what is expected for you before, once you've got that money. So it might be that you have to include the funding body's logos, there might be invitations, those sorts of things. So just check their guidelines as to what the expectation is from you, so that when you do acquit, it makes it so much simpler than trying to scramble and make changes to it. Also look back at your application and see what you said that you would do, and keep copies of all your media, those sorts of things to send back. Make sure you keep copies of all your receipts for acquittal, and of course make sure you submit your acquittal on time. Remember, you're not going to win everything you apply for, but what you do, you'll learn more and more. The more you do it, the more you're going to learn. So don't be disheartened. I think Helpmann and Carclew, the great thing about both of us is that we are a great training ground, and we are very supportive compared to, once you get past this stage, you don't get as much support. So this is a great time to learn, because we're both here to help you, both organisations. We will give you feedback. We often, with Helpmann, we'll redraft applications if you can get them to us early. So please use this time and maximise this time over the next few years. The other thing I will leave you on, which is really important, is to make sure you are kind to yourself. And because it is hard, being an artist is incredibly hard, and getting rejection is really, really hard. So it is really important that you... it's going to happen. That's a really unfortunate part of this, but it is really important that you do nurture yourself, and sometimes it's rather getting feedback straight away. Sometimes it's good to leave that for a week or two and then go back to the funding body and then get that feedback as well. So just look after yourselves as well. So I'm going to ask Joel to come up and lead the panel. And that's our link to our QR code for our weekly e-news. So please sign up, and then you can see all the different things we do. We also, a lot of those tips, we have a tips cheat sheet on our website. So you'll find that there as well with a lot of what I've gone through today. But please, if you can't find it, let us know and we'll get that to you as well. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, on TikTok. And to learn more about our offerings. We're at Helpmann Academy, or www.helpmannacademy.com.au. Thank you so much, and I'll hand over to the wonderful Joel. Sorry, I'm get off my perch.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Jane. As Jane mentioned, my name's Joel, and I'm the funding coordinator. I'm the funding manager at Carclew. Just so I'm aware, how many under 26-year-olds do I have in the room? Am I speaking to the right audience? Great. Perfect. Great to hear. As I said, thanks again, Jane, for having me. We've maintained this partnership for a long time. This is the first time here. Whilst my view is good from Carclew, this one's far superior, but yeah, it's nice. Look, I'm going to do a quick overview of what Carclew does and what funding we offer, just because I find that Q&A is where we get most of our information. Or most of you get your information. So, who are we? Carclew is South Australia's largest multi-art form and culture organisation dedicated to artistic outcomes by and for aged people aged under 26 years and under. We work in three main program areas, providing high-quality arts experiences for children and young people, primarily in disadvantaged communities, working with education sector to embed creativity in schools, and supporting early career artists through funding and professional development to further their practice. Our vision is that we want to be the home of youth arts and creativity. And our mission is to connect all children and young people to a world of creativity, creative possibilities and artists, learners and audiences. How do we do this? Well, one of the main ways we do it is through funding. The Carclew board funds activities for and by young people, 26 years and under, and encourages participation and excellence in the arts through a range of arts programs. We do this through our project grants. Our projects support the development and presentation of creative projects for individuals, and you can apply for up to $10,000 and $3,000 for professional development activity. We also offer it for organisations for up to $20,000, and we offer this in three varieties throughout the year. So we offer a project development grant at the start of the year for individuals. We offer a fellowship in the middle of the year, and then we offer our project and development grants for organisations at the second half of the year, at the end of the year. I'm going to focus on fellowships today because that's where we are currently landing in the midpoint of the year. So we've just done our first project and development individual grants for the start of the year, and we're moving into our fellowship round. So what are fellowships? Fellowships are financial support to emerging cultural and creative artists for arts career building, skills development, exploring new art form practices, methods and techniques, researching towards creative development, and applicants may use a small portion of their proposed budget towards a project, provided it clearly supports their professional development. Fellowships can be to study at an international summer school, to participate in masterclasses, residencies, internships, or mentorships, to experience and immerse yourselves in different creative environments, and to be exposed to innovation and cutting-edge ideas. The criteria or the eligibility criteria for your fellowships applications are you need to be 26 years and under as of the 1st of July, which is the submission date. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander applicants, you can be under 30 years. You need to have demonstrated a track record as a practicing artist and arts worker in any art form. As mentioned, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or Australian, you need to be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or an Australian citizen or a permanent resident and have permanent resident status in Australia. And you need to be currently living and making your work in South Australia. You can apply for up to $10,000, and some examples of recent recipients. We had Harrison Thomas, who was a 12-year-old filmmaker. He recently received $2,854 to attend a one-week youth film camp at the New York Film Academy on the Gold Coast in April. Scarlett Shearer received $10,000 to develop her short film, Guts, a 50-minute coming-of-age story. Charlotte Tayton received $8,658 to undertake a residency and mentorship in the United Kingdom and Portugal, and $3,000 to attend a significant industry conference. Anastasia Camelli received $10,000 to undertake a technical and creative course into transitioning from filmmaking into writing. So Anastasia was actually a really good case. She was exploring getting into photography, and she was a filmmaker. She'd actually received funding as a filmmaker, and she wanted to transition into photography, so still photography. So that's the kind of opportunities that we provide. There's also another one that I really want to cite. Zola Allen was one of our recent recipients, was one of our fellows from last year, and they went to Paris to study in clown school. So there's a wide variety of opportunities that we like to provide funding for, and that's one of the ones that I really like to cite because you don't really see that one that often. This is just a quick snapshot of our application form. Pretty straightforward. There's your proposal up there. You can provide it in the form of a written application, a video application, or an audio. That's, as Jane mentioned, sometimes literacy might be an issue for some applicants. So this is something that we'd love to offer, the opportunity for you to provide an application in a video format. This is your project timeline, so pretty straightforward, but if it's not that straightforward, that's something you can have a consultation with me about. But yeah, pretty straightforward format. As mentioned, timelines are pretty essential, as mentioned by Jane. So yeah, as long as you can kind of get that straightforward, that's really helpful. And then the budget. The budget's obviously sometimes the place where grants go to die, I find. If your budget's not sound, it's not balanced out, it tends to be the place where our panel will find the reasons not to fund your application. So by all means, if you are unsure about your budget, please let me know and we can have a consultation about it. So as mentioned, our fellowships are what we are currently offering. They'll open on this Friday. But secondary to that, we offer our project grants, and project grants will be offered the second half of this year, and it'll be for activity that's happening in January and July next year, 2025. So I'll give you a bit of a snapshot of the times that you need to be aware of at the end of this presentation, but just a quick little summary of tips that we like to provide to all the applicants in your ability to ace your application. This is what I like to call the 5 Bs. Be passionate, but realistic. Showcase your project's passion, but ensure it's feasible and practical for funding consideration. Be thorough. Include all technical info, as the panel prefers comprehensive applications when deciding on funding. Be clear and concise. Clearly express your goals and organise support material in labelled files for clarity. This is a really important one. So, if you are providing an application with multiple files, as you probably will be, try to provide some cloud service or a link on a PDF. A nice organised application is really essential because our applicant or our panel tends to be sifting through a lot of information, and we don't want to have them unsure of what it is they're actually looking for. Budget. As mentioned, the budget's pretty essential. Clearly express your goals and organise support material into your label. That's wrong. And for the 5th one, this is the really key one. Try and book a consultation. Our team is here to help. I am that team. You succeed, so head to our website and book now. And as far as one-on-one consultations go, it's pretty essential. All applicants are encouraged to discuss their proposal prior to submitting a grant application. That's essentially because if there is an issue in your application that could have been mitigated by you having a consultation with me, our panel will probably penalise it severely. And when we sit down and have our assessment panels, the first question tends to be, has this person had a consultation with me? I strongly encourage you to have a consult if you are thinking about applying for an application. Okay, here's the key dates. So our first round of project and development grants for individuals has already closed. We're currently in the period of our fellowships, which will open this Friday and will close mid-June. And then the next round after that will be our project and development grants, and that's for individuals, organisations, and capacity building grants for organisations. And they'll open 18th of July and close mid-September. I wouldn't take those dates for gospel just yet, but that's a rough guide of what's going to be happening. Okay, and if you just want to take a little snapshot of that, then you can kind of check our website, and that's where all the pertinent information is. Okay, moving into the interesting part of the night, we're going to have a little discussion with some of our recent applicants. They've been successful applicants from both Helpmann and Carclew, and I'd just like to bring them up. Mary Angley. Thanks, Mary. Would you like me to do a brief introduction, or are you like, okay, here we go. Is an award-winning theatre maker and a recent graduate from Victoria College of the Arts, Masters of Directing program. A child of the internet. In her work, she reviews the unique properties of both live and digital performance. Thank you, Mary. Glad to have you. Born in Singapore and raised in Tokyo, Japan, Sam Wilson is the singer, songwriter of guitar and guitarist of Tandanya-based art folk band Wake in Fright. In 2000, Sam moved to Adelaide to commence study at the Elder Conservatorium of Music, majoring in popular music and creative technologies. Welcome, Sam. And another Sam. Sam Mathewman is a queer artist and performer based in Gardaland in South Australia. Sam's creative career was ignited as a performer in dance and circus arts, performing throughout Australia and internationally. Welcome, Sam. Okay, so what I might get you each to do is just give us a bit of a quick snapshot of what your funding experience has been, both as recipients of Carclew funding and Helpmann. Mary.
Cool. My first grant from these organisations came from Carclew. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was locked in a room, and I got a grant to buy a projector and spend a little bit of time working on my first solo show. And it was kind of the first proper grant I'd got, and that was huge, opened my whole world up. So I got that one from Carclew. I got a grant from Helpmann, a creative development grant to continue working with that project. I then got a creative innovator grant from Helpmann to work on another show at a larger scale, doing some directing and with other actors involved. So it sort of grew from there. And the last one I sort of snuck in there before I aged out of the category was a fellowship from Carclew, which took me to Berlin to do some physical theatre training.
You might have caught that image of Mary on one of my slides. It features prominently. Yeah, thank you for that. Sam.
Which one?
The next Sam in line.
My first successful funding experience was with Helpmann last year. I think it was at the start of the year. It was a creative development grant. I got to fund the recording of a new album of original songs called "The Modern Shoe Is Ruining the Foot" for my project Wake and Fright. And then in the same year, which again last year, at the end of the year, I applied for the the Creative Investment Fellowship, which was the $10,000 to tour and engage in a cross-cultural arts experience in Tokyo, in Japan. So those have been my two experiences so far.
For myself, the first one out of the two organisations that I received was a fellowship from Carclew, which I received in 2021, and I used that to fund a mentorship and have some theatre time at Goodwood Institute, where from that residency there, I was able to, it essentially informed my Adelaide Fringe show, which I was able to get some funding for through the Adelaide Fringe Fund, and toured that to Hong Kong recently as well. So that was first one from Carclew, and then I was also the recipient of the British School of Rome residency last year, where I had an amazing residency for 3 months in the centre of Rome, and from that I also extended my stay, so I had about 3 months in in Berlin as well, and where I was able to have a exhibition or be a part of a group exhibition at the Berlin Circus Festival, which was fantastic.
Awesome. I guess the first question I have for all three of you is, how essential has funding been to the start of your career to the point you're currently at? How has it been?
You need it. Like it's hard. Making art is expensive, and everyone makes money off it apart from the artist somehow. So I wouldn't have been able to make my last record in the way that I wanted it without the funding I got. I wouldn't have been able to do the Tokyo tour without the funding. It's just genuinely essential to, especially young creatives out there, even if you're working in a so-called mainstream art form, if you're trying to do it in an interesting way where you have control over what you're creating, you just need that. You need that money,
For my own, I wouldn't say that it's changed throughout. I'm still a emerging artist. I've only been out of university for 3 years, so it's hard to say that it's pivoting. But I would say that through applying for Carclew and then Helpmann, it's given me more confidence to look at applying for Australia Council of the Arts or Creative Australia, and state funding as well. So it just gives that confidence.
How many applications have you all done prior to being successful?
I got really lucky. That first one in COVID, it was yes, immediate success. But there have been a lot of failures.
And I guess what brought you to the point where you started to look realistically at funding as an option for what it is you do?
Yeah. I was really lucky that at VCA they taught us how to write a grant application, which feels really unfair. Yeah. Because I did the directing course and they were kind of aware that if you can't get the funding, you cannot make the work.
Yep.
So that was kind of drilled into me at uni. And so also in a directorial role, you need other people around you. And if you want to get other people around you, you need funding. So it was kind of, pretty intuitive. And I'd sort of grown up aware of Carclew. And so, it was a logical step to apply for funding.
I had a lecturer at uni called Derek Pascoe, who was an absolute legend, and really drilled into us that you should be applying for funding from the minute that you are eligible to do it. I've applied for 3 Carclew grants and have yet to be successful. So if that gives you, Joel, I'm putting you on blast right now. But
have you had a consultation with me?
Yeah, I think so, as far as I remember. But I got really lucky with Helpmann. Helpmann was a first go situation, but I have been unsuccessful. I think I've applied for 3 Helpmanns and only gotten 2 out of the 3. So,
actually, that raises a good question. Having been unsuccessful with Carclew, what is something you think would be of benefit for you to moving forward and trying to apply again? Had you looked at what you were unsuccessful for? Did you receive feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely unsuccessful every time for the right reasons, I would say. It's so much of the budgeting, even when you know you're not going to get it, just do it because you'll learn why you wouldn't have gotten it. There's so much budgeting stuff and so many ways of framing a project that I've only just started to understand.
Well, that's a good point because, Jane mentioned that, they see Helpmann as a bit of a training organisation as far as funding goes, and that's definitely how we see Carclew. And we really encourage people to receive feedback from an unsuccessful application. So if I could advise anyone, if you are unsuccessful, definitely receive that feedback. And that's something we work hard to provide succinctly and, as detailed as possibly. So, have you, Sam, had you been unsuccessful? Have you been successful every...
No. I would say that I have probably a 30%, if not 20% success rate of grants that I've applied for.
Right.
I think with Carclew, I first applied for one of their 3 grand ones. I was unsuccessful for probably the right reasons. And
so it would have been a professional development grant?
Yes, yes, and I applied for that, and then I was fortunate to receive the fellowship because I think I dedicated more time to it. Went to the info sessions where we'd learn more about the things, booked a consultation with the person that was before you.
Yep.
And so I was then able to be successful. But I'd also had some experience with my circus company, applying for some funding for them, which was unsuccessful for some of them, but then we became successful for that.
Can I ask, are all three of you over 26 yet, or?
I've got 3 more years.
3 more years.
I'm coming for you.
Well, this is the question for the over 26-year-olds. How difficult do you find applying for funding now?
Yeah. You guys have it so good. Enjoy it. Yeah, I very much miss the sort of Carclew Helpmann Arts SA kind of like pew, 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 like plethora of grants that you have available when you're still coming up. That being said, the idea of the training ground that like it's not the end of the world for a project if you don't get your Carclew or you don't get your Helpmann, because there's another one coming.
And we have multiple applications from the same applicants about trying to get the same project off the ground in multiple rounds. So and it's sometimes they're just not competitive in a certain round up against other ones, and we love to see repeat applicants. So I think if you are in that frame of mind where you don't feel like you want to apply again because you feel like it was unsuccessful once, don't live by that strategy. Also, successful applicants should constantly be reapplying as well, because we like to see pathways. Pathways are really essential for us. We like the stories. Without stories, we can't fight for more funding, and that's what we need. So, sorry, I derailed that question a little bit. Sam, what about you? How's it been for you? Oh, sorry, Sam Mathewman, sorry.
In terms of funding since...
since...
aging out.
I didn't realise how derogatory that term was until someone pointed it out to me, but it is aging out. It seems to be a bit of an ugly term, so I really apologise, but that's the only way that I can really express it.
I would say that not terribly. I haven't found it terrible being out of Carclew, because I applied for it when I was 25, and I was just like, I'm probably not going to get another one from Carclew.
Yep.
So didn't go for it.
So you were subscribing to the notion that you had been funded once, and you were like, well, I don't think I'm going to be successful again.
Very much so, yes.
That's the wrong tact to take.
Yeah.
I encourage you all to not subscribe to Sam's.
Yes. But fortunately, like I'm probably like one of Helpmann's biggest advocates that there's a lot of opportunities there, and then with my circus stuff, there's so many opportunities out there for applying for small nuggets of money versus looking at larger grants as well. So I think I only apply to probably, again, 30% of the grants that I hear about or see. So I'm always at the opinion that if I haven't received any funds that would have made a project successful, then it's on me for not applying for enough of the things.
And I think you raise a good point about staying connected and trying to make sure that you are aware of all the grant opportunities that are out there. And I think for you as previous recipients of grant funding, I would probably be looking to you to kind of educate the emerging artists that are applying. And I think, if there's been cases where I've put successful applicants in contact with applying applicants, and it's been really helpful. So I appreciate you being here. I think, because I think the Q&A might be a great way of kind of getting some information out there. So just before we get to that, can you, each of you, just give me 3 tips for a successful application? Maybe just 1 tip. Let's just go with 1 tip. Let's go 1 tip, yeah.
I would say that applying for grants is easier when you think of your arts making process and your goals as being in alignment with what funding bodies want, which sounds bad. Like, I'm not saying censor yourself and mold yourself into like the image of what Carclew wants, but often what funding bodies want from you, Helpmann, Carclew, but also sort of the more like arts essay governmenty ones, like they want you innovating, they want you making art more accessible, they want you creating discussion in the community. And so if you can just kind of like see those things and get on board with those things, all of a sudden meeting their criteria starts to become a lot more easy. Yeah.
That's an excellent point.
Oh, thank you.
Because sometimes, you get applicants that won't have read the brief, and you need to understand who you're applying from, which organisation you're applying from. And so thanks.
I guess it's kind of a slight double thing, but one of the things I would say is like, don't be concerned about what is socially trendy when applying for a grant. The first grant I got was basically kind of surrounding the concept for an album that was like seriously anti-AI, because I just had like a bad weekend of reading too many of the like AI image prompts and being like, this actually isn't as interesting as everybody's saying it is. And so I want to make a record that is as human as possible. And, a lot of people would say that that's not going with the stream of what the arts conversation is. But if you've got a strong take on something, just give it a shot. And the slight addendum to that is if you see a grants opportunity, just keep an eye on grants opportunities. And if you don't have an idea, just try and make one for a grant. A lot of the times it's really helpful to be given a direction by a grant, in the sense that having to write out what you want to do for the next 6 months is kind of a crucial skill anyway. And if you can try and get some funding while you're doing that, that's really cool too.
Mine's quite a simple one, and it was advice I was given from Jasha Boyce, who's one of the head people of Gravity and Other Myths, one of Australia's best exported circus company. And she is responsible for all of their growth in the sense of their financials, because she applies for all of the grants for that company. And it was as simple as whenever you come across a grant that you have a realistic agenda to try and apply for it, first thing you do is you create a document, either in Google Docs or Word document, with the title and the due date. The next thing you do is you create a folder on your laptop or Google thing, and you do the same thing. Have it as whatever the grant name is and the due date, so that you're constantly seeing the grant, the due date, wherever it is, and then you can always just refer back to that and start filling all those crucial details that Jane went on into that document and those folders.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to put it to the audience if they just wanted to raise their hand, and we'll ask some questions. Anyone got any questions? Oh, we get the mic. Yeah. Okay.
So when you're applying for a grant, you're doing your budget, do you include your cost of living expenses? Is it just materials, staff, that sort of thing? Or do you go, I need to eat while I'm doing things?
Great question. I would say that...
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm going to bring up Jane as well. Jane's going to be a part of this panel, because we'll ask questions to... You can ask questions to all of us. How about that?
You can go.
Oh, hi. Do you want me to answer? My suggestion, as I said, if you can either apply for that funding, or you could include that, but make sure you do it as in kind. So you could have your cost of living or your rent. If you're planning to work full time and you need to stop work for the project, you can put that in. Or you're going overseas, you can put that in. If you're not applying for that funding, put it in as in kind. So you have it in your income, but also in your expenditure. Well, you remember I was talking about the in-kind components, so I would recommend doing something like that. So that also shows that you're making that contribution. But you can certainly look at the funding guiding body, the funding guidelines, and if you can apply for it, you're certainly welcome to do that as well.
And I would say that Carclew loves to see applicants remunerating themselves, paying themselves a fee. So I know there's some funding bodies that don't like to see that, but we strongly encourage it. So we like to see projects that are feasible. So and that includes you living. So yeah. Have
When I did my fellowship, though, because like Carclew was sending me to Berlin, I said I would cover the cost of my food, but then I had the grant covering the cost of like my transport and my accommodation, because I figured I would be eating in Adelaide the same as in Berlin.
But I think it's, and this applies with film applications, as long as the funding is allocated appropriately. You know, don't be allocating a portion of the budget to catering in favour of a better DOP or something like that. You know, that will kind of come through. You know, so as long as you can show cause for why there's an expenditure there and it can be justified, then put it in. Anyone else?
A lot of the time artists are working with projects that aren't fully resolved at the time that you're putting in an application. So a lot of the work comes through the process in an organic kind of way. How do you guys as artists navigate that in an application?
That was a huge issue for me initially with like, I was like, how am I supposed to know what this project is going to be like in 6 months? But I did find that if I just started, and sometimes you just have to make some assumptions, and I think most funding bodies, I definitely would say Helpmann has been for me, are very accommodating of things changing as long as the purpose and like the initial idea is still strong. If the nitty-gritty details change, that's totally fine. But yeah, if you just start writing it out and you're just ironing it out, you generally start to realize you actually do know what you want to do, or at least that's been my experience. But yeah, don't be too stressed by the fact that like, I can't possibly know that venue is going to be available in 6 months. It's like, if that venue changes, that's fine.
I would say for a question like that, which is very, very relevant, I would say that the first recommendation I would give you would be to apply for a mentorship grant or try and find a mentor, because throughout any of that process, you're going to start working out where your next project is going to be and have some realistic guidelines to then apply for grants for in the future.
I have a question for the panel. Do applicants feel that some art forms are favoured over others? And what I mean by that is, do you feel like if you're operating in the performing arts or clown space, circus arts. Sorry, that sounded bad, but yeah, circus arts. Do you feel like it's not going to get funded over something that's a little bit more mainstream?
I think with any funding body, they will want to support something that has a clear objective and you really know what it's going to be. And so having a multi-arts discipline can make that confusing, which will make you look unfavourable in a funding body's eyes, unless there's a really clear direction you're going with. So you can't necessarily have a practice in circus and in visual arts, but I want to bring circus into visual arts spaces, and I think that if you can communicate that effectively, then a funding body will look at you.
Yeah, I mean, you do raise a really good point. You need to be really specific about what it is that you are applying for funding for. And I just tend to find some applicants feel that they're disadvantaged by working in certain genres. So I just wanted to get a bit of an idea from the successful applicants. Sam, do you have any thoughts on that?
I definitely have a bit of an inferiority complex about being in like popular music. Do you know what I mean? I'll tell you, we have always like a high percentage of music applicants. That's the
like
thing.
Way too many music applicants.
That's sometimes what I wonder is like, I'm seeing like really awesome artists being like, today we're gonna like, play a saxophone like through a brick wall, and that's gonna be like the project, and it's like, that's fantastic. But then when I'm like, I'm gonna sing a song and I'm gonna try and record it, I get a little like, it can sometimes feel like, why should that money go to me, but I would say like any form of art is valid. The more experimental stuff, the more mainstream stuff, as long as there's like a person behind it or a community behind it, like, you know, go for it.
So can I just add something in terms of musicians? We get a lot of applications from musicians, and most of them tend to be for albums, and they'll apply every year. And now I'm going to put out a new album, but what lacks with those applications is the distribution or the marketing component of it, that it's just recording the album, but it's not. It's the other component of, okay, well, what's the actual outcome going to be, rather than an album that no one's going to hear, like, you know, in terms of that marketing plan, or, you know, are you going to tour, those sorts of things. So for us, that progression would be better if you're coming every year to say, look, we've done the album, now what's the next step? Now we're going to tour, whatever those things might be, but nearly every musician tends to apply for albums every year, and so when you get a lot of applications that are all very similar, that are coming up against each other in a grant round, you know, so some of those things I think are also important to look at as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Wait. I can hear you. Yeah, that's good.
You can project.
For the recording.
For the recording.
Oh, right. Sorry. Apologies.
Sorry.
Don't project.
So this isn't super pertinent to Carclew, and I'm not super sure about Helpmann, but as someone who